The girl who never came home. It was supposed to be normal. That's what I remember most. The air smelled like fall leaves and car exhaust. My backpack felt heavier than usual, like it knew something I didn't. I had begged my mom for weeks to let me walk home from school. I wanted independence. I wanted to prove I wasn't a little kid anymore. She finally said yes. I wish she hadn't. The streets were quiet, too quiet. I remember kicking a rock down the sidewalk, rehearsing what I'd say when I walked through the door. See? I made it. I never got to say it. The van pulled up slow beside me. Old, white, no windows in the back. The door slid open. A hand grabbed me before I could scream. Another clamped over my mouth. The world flipped sideways. I was thrown onto cold metal flooring. The door slammed shut. Something rough was pulled over my head. Rope burned into my wrists. The van started moving. I screamed into the darkness until my throat tore raw. No one heard me. The house. It smelled like mold and old carpet. They dragged me down steps. Concrete, damp air. I remember shivering uncontrollably, not just from cold, but from the realization that no one knew where I was. Two men. Masks. Voices that sounded calm, almost bored. They spoke about me like I was an object, like I wasn't even in the room. Days blurred together. No windows, just a mattress on the floor. A single bulb that flickered like it couldn't decide if I deserved light. They would bring food, water. Sometimes they'd turn on a small TV and force me to watch the news. That's how I knew my mom was searching. She looked smaller on TV, older, crying. Please bring my daughter home. I pressed my forehead against the cold wall and whispered, I'm here. The slow-breaking weeks turned into months. They stopped wearing masks. Brothers. That's what they were. They laughed together, shared jokes, called each other by name. They weren't monsters in the way I imagined monsters. They were worse. They were ordinary. I tried to fight at first. I really did. Every time the door opened, I'd lunge, scratch, bite. It never worked. Eventually, survival changes shape. You learn when to speak, when to stay quiet, when to look scared, when to look empty. You conserve strength. You wait. The second girl. One night, I heard screaming upstairs. Real screaming. Not mine. They brought her down, kicking and sobbing. She couldn't have been older than 12. I saw myself in her. She fought harder than I did. Longer. But captivity is like water against stone. Over time, it wears you down. Years passed. Yes, years. They stopped locking her chains as tight. She started calling them by name. Eventually, she started calling them my husbands. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. She had broken, and they had rebuilt her. The folktale 10 years. That's how long I was gone. Long enough for my face to age in missing posters. Long enough for documentaries to be made. The girl who vanished. Cold case specials. Podcasts. People speculating. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a mystery. But my mom never stopped. Every year on my birthday, she stood in front of cameras and said, I know she's alive. And I was. Barely. The plan. You don't survive 10 years without learning your captor's routines. One brother always left on Thursdays. Groceries. The other stayed home. The broken girl cooked that day. She moved slower now, eyes distant. But something changed that morning. When he turned his back, she lifted the pot of boiling grits from the stove. Our eyes met. For the first time in years. She looked awake. She threw it. He screamed, skin blistering instantly. He stumbled back, clawing at his face. That was my moment. I grabbed the knife from the counter. I didn't hesitate, not once. The blade slid in, hot, final. He dropped. The fight. The other girl stared at me like I was the monster. You killed him, she whispered. She lunged. We crashed into the table. Dishes shattered. She was stronger than I expected. Years of twisted loyalty fueled her. We fought like animals. At one point, I thought she might win. But survival had sharpened me. When she slipped on the spilled water, I didn't think. I acted. Silence filled the room. The house that had swallowed me finally felt small. Freedom. I took the keys, ran barefoot into the street. The sky looked too big, too bright. I flagged down the first car I saw. The driver almost didn't stop. When they did, I must have looked like a ghost. The reunion, hospitals, police, cameras again, and then my mom. She aged 10 years in 1 second when she saw me. Then she collapsed into me like she never planned to let go again. "I told them," she sobbed. "I told them you were alive." Aftermath. She went through years of counseling, therapy, recovery, and eventually she wrote a book. Not about the men, not about the horror, but about survival. About how captivity doesn't just trap your body, it traps your mind. And how breaking free isn't one moment, it's a lifetime. Epilogue. People still tell the story. They call it a miracle. They call it justice. And I remember, I just wanted to prove I could walk home alone.